There's a moment in the Pista Sophia most people never make it to. Not because it isn't in there, but because when you read it closely, it changes the entire shape of the story you thought you knew. It's after the resurrection. The disciples are still trying to understand what just happened. They're still thinking in systems, rules, hierarchy, reward, and punishment. But then she speaks, Mary Magdalene. And what she asks is not about salvation, not about heaven, not about forgiveness. She asks something far more unsettling. What happens to perception when it gets trapped inside fear? And in that question, the entire room shifts. Because she isn't asking how to obey. She's asking how to see clearly again. Most traditions remember the disciples as the foundation. But in this text, something unusual happens. They hesitate. They misunderstand. They repeat what they've been taught. And again, it is Mary who continues to ask the questions that go deeper than explanation. Not louder, not emotional, just clear, as if she is remembering something the others are still trying to learn. And that is where the real tension begins. Because in mystical traditions like this, ignorance is not about intelligence. It's about perception under distortion. Not blindness, not misalignment. The feeling that what you're seeing is real but incomplete. And then comes the line that carries the weight of everything. Jesus begins to respond to her differently than the others. Not because she is favored, but because she is listening without resistance. And in these texts, that matters more than belief, more than devotion, more than status. He begins to describe something that isn't geography, not heaven as a place, but layers of perception, states of awareness that either expand or contract, depending on what holds your attention. And in that framing, everything changes, because suddenly the journey is not upward, it is inward clarity. Mary keeps asking, and the more she asks, the more the language shifts away from stories and into structure. Not commandments, not doctrine, but descriptions of how consciousness becomes tangled in its own interpretations, and how it can become free again. And here's where the text becomes dangerous, not in the way people assume. Dangerous because it removes the need for external meditation. Because if understanding is internal, then authority becomes optional. Not rebellious, just unnecessary. So later editors had a problem, because texts like this don't center institutions, they center awareness. And awareness cannot be easily controlled. It doesn't scale into hierarchy. It doesn't depend on intermediaries. It simply recognizes. So the story gets softened over time, reframed, filtered into something safer, something that turns inner perception into external dependence again. But the original thread still leaks through. A woman asking questions that go beyond comfort. A teacher responding now with control, but with precision. And disciples who are still learning what it means to actually see. And if you strip away everything else, the symbolism, the language, the layers of translation, you're left with something very simple. The text is not asking you to believe in Mary Magdalene. It is asking you to recognize what it means when perception stops repeating what it was told. Because in this framing, understanding was never about permission. It was about clarity that doesn't rely on approval. And that is why our voice matters in these writings. Not because it is louder, but because it cuts through noise without trying to win against it. That's the part most readers miss. Not the mystery, not the secrecy, but the quiet implication underneath it all. That the deepest understanding doesn't arrive as revelation. It arrives as recognition of what was always being overlooked. If this landed anywhere inside you, even slightly, don't just let it pass through. Because the real question this text leaves behind isn't something you answer in your head. It's something you notice in your own attention afterward. So here's what I want from you. If this challenged the way you think about perception, understanding, or what truth even means, like it so it can reach someone else who needs to see it. As someone you know is stuck only seeing one layer of reality, share it with them. Not as an argument, but as an opening. If you feel like there's something deeper you want to return to here later, save it, because these kinds of ideas don't really land all at once. And if you want more of these hidden layer readings that strip things down to what's underneath the surface, subscribe. But I'm not interested in passive agreement here. I want to know where this actually hits friction for you. Because that's usually where the real thinking starts. So tell me this. Do you think understanding comes from authority or from perception that no longer needs permission to see clearly? And more importantly, what part of this felt uncomfortably true? Even if you're not sure why. I'll be reading the comments. Till next time, remember, we're all in this together.